The Lakers trade Dalton Connect and draft assets for a 23-year-old center.
DeAndre Hunter is a member of the Cavs.
Brandon Ingram is a Toronto Raptor.
The Chiefs are 60 minutes, 4 quarters, and 1 trophy away from another championship.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
From being voted the most overrated player in the NFL to being voted NFL MVP.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast.
Be good, do good, God bless, and go Bills. The words that Josh Allen closed his acceptance speech with after being named NFL MVP. Let that sink in, folks. Josh Allen is the NFL MVP, and they got it right. I swelled with pride watching that go down on Thursday night. And look, I know we ultimately want a Super Bowl more than anything. And Josh Allen wants a Super Bowl more than anything. But this is pretty freaking cool. And it obviously puts an exclamation point on an incredible season for Josh Allen, but also his legacy and his story that is very much still being written. Josh Allen is an NFL MVP. The first Buffalo Bills player to do it since Thurman Thomas in 1991. The only other time it happened was O.J. Simpson in 1973. Thurman Thomas, 91. O.J. Simpson, 73. Josh Allen, 2024. End of list. I won't lie to you folks. I got emotional watching his speech last night. Just so proud. I'm just so proud. And in typical Josh Allen fashion, during the speech, his acceptance speech, he made it about everyone else. It's an individual award, but he made it about everyone else. And first of all, before I really give you my thoughts on his speech, how cool was it to see Deion Dawkins on the stage when he accepted the award? If there's anybody who's been a champion for Josh Allen, it's Deion Dawkins. And of course, he's the blindside protector and has been since day one for Josh Allen. What a cool thing to see their relationship as left tackle, quarterback, and really the two guys that have been part of it offensively all the way through, the only two. And it's incredible. But of course, Josh doesn't make it about himself. He, first of all, thanks God. The other nominees, called them great stewards of the game and deserving if they were in his position. Thank the Bills organization, the Pagulas, Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott. Noted that while it's an individual award, it's derived from team success, and he thanked his teammates, complimented the locker room and the culture, and of course, the support staff in the building. And there's a lot of people that work hard, whether it's equipment staff, training staff, cafeteria staff, facilities people, that work together for these players to go out there and perform. And Josh Allen was right in showing gratitude towards them as well. And then he thanked his parents. And my goodness, his parents were cutting onions. Could you imagine? That story is just so good. A farm family from small town California, growing cantaloupes, working hard. All of a sudden, your son's the MVP of the NFL, and they were overjoyed for sure. Really cool, special moment to see them and their reaction. He thanked his siblings and he thanked his fiancee, Haley. It was awesome. I got emotional watching it. I'm sure a lot of you did too. Josh's journey, the Bills' journey, both have come such a far way. Allen couldn't get a scholarship to play college football, has to go to junior college, then begs for an opportunity to play big-time college football. He got the opportunity to do so at Wyoming. Certainly had his rough patches at Wyoming, but showcased undeniable talent. Ends up being the third quarterback drafted. Ridiculed, called a parody of a prospect, and here we are. And for the Bills, it was a long journey to find a franchise quarterback to replace Jim Kelly. You remember the names: Todd Collins, Alex Van Pelt, Rob Johnson, J.P. Lozman, Kelly Holcomb, Trent Edwards, Brian Brom, E.J. Manuel, Thad Lewis, Jeff Toole, Kyle Orton, Nathan Peterman, Doug Flutie, Drew Bledsoe, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Tyrod Taylor. It was worth the wait, wasn't it? 17-year playoff drought. And look at us now. Playoff wins are now the norm in Buffalo. Someone asked me the other day to take the Chiefs roster, the Eagles roster, those are the two Super Bowl teams, and the Bills roster, and create a combined starting lineup using all three teams. And they said, how many Bills players do you think would start for all three teams? And he excluded the quarterback because nobody wants that conversation. I said, maybe Christian Benford, maybe Deion Dawkins, maybe, and that's it. It's pretty telling, right? In a soft reset year, Josh Allen had this Bills team at 13-4 and in the AFC Championship game. The standard that was set in Buffalo was met despite a significant roster turnover and a soft reset. The Bills had one other Pro Bowler. They had no other All-Pros. Josh Allen was truly the most valuable player in the NFL and the embodiment of what an NFL MVP is. It's awesome. This is absolutely awesome. All right, folks, let's talk about a Bills coaching staff hire that when this news came through, it had my head spinning, and I really started to tweet out a bunch of things, and people in our subtext community got a bunch of texts from me because my head was spinning when the Bills made this move. And so I want to break it down for you here on this podcast. So Bruce Feldman reports that Ryan Nielsen is expected to join the Bills defensive coaching staff as a senior defensive assistant. And so you're probably wondering, well, who's Ryan Nielsen? Well, Ryan Nielsen has recently been regarded as one of the bright up-and-coming defensive minds. And he served with he started really with the North Carolina State Wolfpack, really became a hot name. Then he went to the Saints, and he was their defensive line coach from 2017 through 2022. And then he was offered the LSU defensive coordinator job. And so they added the title of assistant head coach in 2021 in New Orleans. Then in 2022, he was named co-defensive coordinator. And when he was with the Saints, the defensive line had a lot of success. There was a 3-year stretch where they were top 3 in sacks, top 3 in pressure rate, very good pass rush group. And then he gets the opportunity to be the Falcons defensive coordinator in 2023. And, obviously that coaching staff got let go after the season. And then this past year, he was the Jaguars defensive coordinator. And boy, obviously the Jaguars' entire situation was rough and the defense was rough. But, what he did with the Saints, really successful stretch. And then, of course, even with the Falcons, they had a notable shift in scoring defense, and how it improved year over year was drastically different. And then they actually doubled their sack total year over year from the previous season. So a lot of good results there. So I like all that. That's all interesting to me. I like how he's been able to help pass rushes come along and regarded very highly. There's good connections here. Bobby Babich has referred to Ryan Nielsen as somebody that's in his inner circle. Dave Doran, the head coach at NC State, is somebody that has a relationship with Sean McDermott. But really the talking point that I can't get out of my head since this move was made and kind of just connecting dots is Ryan Nielsen's affiliation with man coverage. Last season, the Jaguars ran the second most man coverage in the NFL. The Falcons the year before, where he was the defensive coordinator, they were 11th in man coverage rate. And then the Saints in 2022, when he was the co-defensive coordinator, they were 8th in man coverage frequency. And the Bills are not a man coverage aggressive team. However, that sort of changed a bit this past season. During the 2024 season, the Bills played 20% man coverage, which is pretty normal for them. If you look at the last 4 or 5 years, they're about 20% man coverage, but that's not very frequent. It's 27th in the NFL. In the playoff run, the 3 playoff games, Broncos, Ravens, Chiefs, the Bills' man coverage rate skyrocketed to 37%. And if you look at the last 2, the Ravens and the Chiefs against Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, right? Huge games. The Bills ran 42% man coverage against those teams. 42% would be a crazy high frequency. Compared to the rest of the NFL, if the Bills ran 42% man coverage, that would have been the second highest rate of any team in the league during the 2024 regular season. And if they were to have maintained the 36.5% that they ran throughout the 3 playoff games, that would still be top 5. So in the biggest games of the season, the Bills really cranked up their man coverage, and they just hired a coach that has strong ties to playing man coverage. Certainly some dots to connect here that I certainly can't ignore. And then you look at this quote from Sean McDermott as I continue to really just kind of drive this home. Sean McDermott was asked in his year-end press conference about playing so much man coverage against Kansas City, right? They played 42% man coverage against Kansas City, and obviously we know that the defensive results are very poor. But this is what Sean McDermott said, and I quote, "When they are getting the ball out fast and you're in zone, you can sit there and live a slow death or tighten it up and play man." Look, we can dissect that quote in a million different ways. And I think the Bills' failures in man coverage had a lot to do with Christian Benford being injured early in the game, but also the rub routes that Kansas City ran, and then just the levels that the Bills' defensive backs were on. They were oftentimes on the same level, and so when you saw those switch releases, when you saw those rubs, it would bump guys off course. They couldn't stay in phase, and guys are wide open, and Pat Mahomes was just getting the ball out quick, and it was a disaster. We know that. But he said, when they are getting the ball out fast and you're in zone, you can sit there and live a slow death, or you can tighten it up and play man. The Bills' defense in 2024 had a number of issues. But one of those issues was defending quick passes. The Bills' defense in 2024 was 23rd in defensive EPA per pass on throws that came out in under 2.5 seconds. And as you may remember, Patrick Mahomes in that game got the ball out in crazy fast. I think under 2 seconds on average. It was like 1.8 or something. And it was crazy.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Imagine going to the big game this Sunday. That's what a lot of the people around me here on Radio Row are going to do, and the fans who are coming to New Orleans. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have time searching. Inspiration makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and take the work on tickets Gametime. Download Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
The Lakers trade Dalton Connect and draft assets for a 23-year-old center.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
The Lakers traded Dalton Connect, Cam Reddish, an unprotected first-round pick in 2031, and a 2030 pick swap with the Charlotte Hornets for young center Mark Williams. As Brian and I explained in our immediate reaction show earlier Thursday, we didn't even think Mark Williams would be available, so he is not somebody that we had even been thinking about as a possibility for the Lakers, obviously needing a center. He is very big, he's athletic, he is bouncy, he has been often injured. A lot of potential with Mark Williams. I think a lot of question marks, some risk, although some possibility for high rewards. I have questions for Doug Branson, the co-host of Locked On Hornets, also the traffic cop of the midday Locked On NBA Daily Show, having to rein in the likes of Matt Moore and Hayes. Doug, how are you, man?
I'm good. It's an exciting day. We're going to go live on Locked On NBA in an hour and a half. Or no, actually half an hour. So I'm excited.
Well, let me get you the hell out of here. All right, so I'll begin with this. I heard you say on today's Locked On Hornets, when you and Walker Mel were reacting to the deal, you described Mark Williams as polarizing. What makes him polarizing?
Well, I think we have to decide what Mark Williams we're going to talk about. Are we going to talk about the Mark Williams that the Hornets drafted and played before getting injured, who looked like a super mobile big that could guard out on the perimeter, that was blocking shots all over the place, that could really run the floor like a gazelle, and even had us thinking with a high free throw shooting percentage that he could extend his range to at least the mid-range and maybe even someday become a three-point shooter? Are we going to talk about that Mark Williams? Exactly. Or are we going to talk about the Mark Williams that we've seen post thumb, back, and now foot injury, and particularly the Mark Williams that we've seen over the past couple of weeks, who has looked slow, who has looked plodding, who has been mistiming a lot of his block shots, who has been struggling to get up and down the floor, struggling to rebound, struggling to go up against bigs like Jonas Valanciunas and guard them at all, who has been sagging way off of Brook Lopez and allowed him to score 4 3-pointers within the first couple of minutes of a first quarter. So which Mark Williams are we going to talk about? Which one did we just trade? I think that's going to sort of be the hinge point on how we evaluate this trade a few years from now.
Well, I think you and I ultimately, at least over the next 15 or so minutes, we're going to try to talk about both. The Lakers have sourced that and then put out in reports that they are confident that Williams' back issues are no longer a lingering concern. The thumb, the foot, he began the season, I correct, with a foot injury, but since then he's been on the court. He's averaging about 16 points, 10 rebounds since that return. You got into it a little bit, but where do you think he's at physically right now?
So what I think is interesting is the collision between the Hornets slowly putting weight on Mark Williams and Mark Williams has some agency on that. He decided he needed to put some more weight on his body as well to bang inside with some of the bigger bigs in the league. The coinciding of that with the recovery from the back injury, with the recovery from the foot injury. And I think you're seeing a Mark Williams that has gotten bigger, but maybe not fitter, and a Mark Williams that I think has never, even when he first entered the league, has never shown a particular edge or a physicality that I think many Hornets fans were hoping he would show and hoping that he would develop if he put a little bit more weight on, right? Hey, I trust my body now. I'm big enough to go up against some of these bigger guys, and so now I'm going to turn into that. That hasn't happened this season. He is not a physical big on the interior really at all. He gets pushed around at will, and I think what was most disappointing over the past couple of weeks is seeing his effort start to drop a little bit. Was that the injury to LaMelo Ball? He wasn't getting as involved in as much offensively because so many of the playmakers for the Hornets right now are hurt. Was that part of it? Was it, hey, I don't trust my body as much anymore. I'm different physically. I think we might hear more about that as he gives interviews in LA talking about his time in Charlotte. But one thing I know for sure is that over the past couple of weeks, we saw a different, extremely less effective Mark Williams that we saw pre-injury.
It's interesting you bring this up because Anthony Davis has gone through kind of I don't know about radically different versions of his body, but certainly more bulked up or slimmed down, depending on what the asks might be in terms of physicality in the middle, what you're looking for from him. And there have also been times where he hasn't necessarily looked quite as comfortable with the new version of the body, or at the least, it's taken some time to get used to. These. In some respects, these guys are who they are physically, and it doesn't mean that you can't pick up new traits or improve new things. Like, Pau Gasol became a more physical player over his time with the Lakers, but it took a second, I think, for him to really trust that part of, or that new addition to his game and approach. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes with Mark Williams.
Yeah, the good news for Lakers fans is that he's going to a team with two of the best playmakers on the planet, and two players that will command a lot of attention from opposing defenses, leaving him even more. I mean, he was able to do some pretty incredible things with very little space inside the paint. Like, one of the things I always commended Mark Williams on from the moment that he stepped on the floor with the Charlotte Hornets was that he rarely makes mistakes once he gets the ball in his hands and he gets near the restricted area. I think part of the problems we've seen this year is that he's being pushed outside of the restricted area because there's less space, because the Hornets don't have that gravity. They don't have that. They don't have those playmakers right now on the floor. So that's going to change. So offensively, I think you're going to see a more consistent Mark Williams than we've seen over the past couple of weeks. I think the big concern, though, still is defense, is physicality, is his ability to decide what kind of defender he's going to be on the fly. And I think that's what he struggled with over the past couple of weeks.
And I definitely want to touch on the defense, but I want to stay on the offense for a second. What are the strengths that are there for him? You hear about finishing lobs. You talked about that's his comfort zone inside the lane. What are the things that he's good at?
Yeah, for sure. He's a good screen setter. He's a great screen setter, and he's very effective. There's an economy of movement in his role game. He's going to get set up really well by the playmakers, by Luka, by LeBron. And once he gets the ball, he's got good hands. Once he gets the ball in his hands again, I think he makes very competent moves. He's not a huge turnover guy underneath the basket, or at least he hasn't been traditionally. So I think those, again, decent free throw shooter to good free throw shooter. So when he does get fouled, you can count on him there. He's not awful. So does that portend sometime in the next couple of years that he could extend his range a little bit? Perhaps. But I think the roll game is the obvious thing for Mark Williams. He's very effective when he gets a little space going towards the rim. In the half court, I think he's going to catch lobs. Mm-hmm. But right now, I think transition-wise, I mean, what surprised me most over the past couple of weeks with him that I didn't see prior to these injuries and prior to the weight being put on is when he switches from offense to defense, how long it takes him to make that switch and get up the floor. So I question, are there going to be like transition lobs? I'm not sure, but half court, yeah, absolutely. He can still get up off the floor. He's going to put himself into position for those finishes.
Yeah, I imagine that the Lakers are picturing, hoping for, envisioning a type of relationship on court that Luka had with Derek Lively. Like they're going to be looking to try to recreate that with Mark Williams. Just, the big finishing target, rim running, like Lively, good hands. I've also noticed too, both from what I'm reading and just looking at the numbers, seems like Mark Williams is a pretty good passer. Like he's got a pretty good feel for, 2.5 assists per game given from that position, given that he's only played about a regular season's worth of games, unfortunately, because of injuries. That seems like something that could be a potential strength for him.
I think potential is the key word there, because yes, he can catch a pass at the nail and he can identify, hey, I've got a lane here to the corner, and he can hit that pass. Has he gotten that much opportunity to do that in Charlotte? Because again, a number of factors, injuries, a lot of young players, a new coach. He's gone through a couple of offenses now. Is there an abundance of tape on that? I would say no, but absolutely the potential is there.
DeAndre Hunter is a member of the Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Cleveland Cavaliers did not stand pat at the 2025 NBA trade deadline, as they have sent Karis LeVert and George Niang to the Atlanta Hawks in exchange for DeAndre Hunter. There was some draft compensation, mainly second-round picks, and a few pick swaps, like swaps of swaps, that were sent to Atlanta to complete this deal. But the Cavs made an upgrade at the small forward position, and this is a big deal, I think, in terms of the Cavs' title hopes. I think this is a big deal in terms of how they view this team moving forward and what they're capable of. I don't think that the Cavs make this deal unless they believe that they are capable of winning the NBA Finals in June. So I do want to talk about the ramifications of this deal, trading away Karis LeVert, trading away George Niang, what this looks like financially. I will do that in segments 2 and 3 of this emergency edition. But I want to start with just who DeAndre Hunter is as a basketball player. Like, what are the Cavs getting? And I will have on for tomorrow's podcast, going to sit with Brad Rowland of Locked On Hawks. We're going to talk about Hunter and what he means for the Cavs and do all of that. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that too. But DeAndre Hunter is somebody that the Cavs have not had. Like, he is a true small forward. He is somebody that they have been searching for a really long time. The knock on this roster construction is the Cavs don't necessarily have, a plethora of true wings. They've had Karis LeVert, who is an undersized 3, really more of a 2. Max Strus, more of a 2. Isaac Okoro, more of a 2. Dean Wade, really good, but more of a 4. Like, that is what this Cavs roster has been. And DeAndre Hunter is somebody who comes in, and he is the prototypical small forward that the Cavs have been searching for. He's a solid defender. I don't think he's a great defender, but he is absolutely somebody that if and when the Cavs see the Boston Celtics in the postseason, he's going to be matched up on Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. That is what that is going to be his job on that end of the floor. Is he going to be a defensive player of the year finalist? No, but I think he does make the Cavs better on that end of the floor. If nothing else, he gives them more optionality on that end of the floor, because Dean Wade is still a really good defender when he's healthy. Isaac Okoro is still a really good defender when he's healthy, but now the Cavs have a better option, or another option, I guess, as we can look at it, on that end of the floor that they haven't really had. And then the other thing is the offensive end of the floor, right? DeAndre Hunter does not have the same level of creation that Karis LeVert has. I don't expect to see DeAndre Hunter creating for himself, creating for others. He's mainly a guy that's going to be attempting catch and shoot 3-pointers. But the good news for the Cavs is that he's really good at that. So on catch and shoot attempts so far this year with Atlanta, he's shooting right around 40% on over 5 catch and shoot threes per game, which is a really good number. And on wide open threes, he's shooting around 50%. With the guys that he's going to be playing with, and we will talk in a second about whether or not he should be in the starting lineup, all of that, because there's a lot to dive into from this. But when he's on the floor with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, he's going to be getting some really good looks. I know Trae Young in Atlanta is obviously one of the best creators in the NBA. He's the leader in assists this season. And obviously DeAndre Hunter is going from playing with him to playing with two guys that can create at maybe not quite that level, but a level really, really near to it. So I do think that he's going to fit in really well. And I think this is a really good move for the Cavs. I think that the Cavs got better by making this trade. I think that this is one that, I first talked about this the other day, and I heard at this point, it's probably a month ago, I heard about the Cavs having interest in DeAndre Hunter, but it's just so far away from the trade deadline that you hear things and it's nothing that is concrete enough to report. But, you hear the whispers out there that he's somebody that they're interested in, that could make sense there. And to see it come to fruition, I think that this is a really strong vote of confidence from Kobe Altman and the rest of the front office, Mike Gansey, Brandon Williams, everybody else. I think this is a really strong vote of confidence in what they think this roster is capable of. This is an upgrade. It is. That's not to say that Karis LeVert and George Niang aren't good basketball players, because they absolutely are. But this is an upgrade. Now, is DeAndre Hunter going to be in the starting lineup? I don't know. I think that'll be a very interesting thing for Kenny Atkinson to figure out. When he was in Atlanta this year, for the most part, he was coming off the bench. I believe he only started 4 games this season with the Hawks, but throughout his career, he's a guy that has started much more frequently than he's come off the bench. This is really his first year in that 6-man role. Last year, he started 37 of the 57 games he played. Before that, he started 67 games, 52 games the year before that. Now, the knock on him has at times been his availability. Last year, he only played 57 games. This year, he's played 37 games, which there was a 2 or 3 week stretch earlier in the season where he missed time with an injury for Atlanta. But going back to 22-23, played 67 games. 21-22 played 53 games, which is not a great number. 20-21, which of course was a shortened season, his second year in the league, only played in 23 games. Like, that is a knock on him, the availability thing. But when you combine that with the rest of the options, this is not necessarily only Dean Wade insurance, but it does give the Cavs more optionality. And there are some lineups that I think should be really exciting to look at, because the Cavs are going to be able to, at some point, be able to go Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, DeAndre Hunter at the 3, Dean Wade at the 4, and Evan Mobley at the 5. And I think that on both ends of the floor, that can be a really, really dynamic group. Having the creation of Garland, Mitchell, and Mobley being able to create as a big too, plus the switchability that they'll have between Mobley, Wade, and Hunter, I think is something that's going to make this defense better than it has been. I think that is something that Cavs fans should be really, really excited about, because this is something that I do think raises the floor of this team. I think it also raises their postseason ceiling, because we can talk about how they match up with the Boston Celtics. And I look at this move, and I was going to look at any move the Cavs did or didn't make on the trade deadline day. How does this affect how they match up with Boston? Because I think as is, they were a team that was good enough to beat New York. And I do think as is, they were a team that was good enough to beat Boston, but their margin for error was so slim. There really wasn't much, because we saw that on Tuesday night. If Evan Mobley has a bad game, despite the fact that I thought Donovan Mitchell played well in that game, Darius Garland played well in that game, Jared Allen played well in that game, but Evan Mobley played poorly. If he had a bad game, the Cavs couldn't beat the Celtics. And I still think that is true. Like, the Cavs need Evan Mobley to be much better than he was on Tuesday to beat Boston in a playoff series. But I think that this brings down maybe the level of greatness that Evan Mobley needs to achieve. He still can't be what he was on Tuesday and expect the Cavs to beat the Celtics 4 times in 7 games. But I don't think he needs to necessarily be as great as maybe he did 24 hours ago for the Cavs to accomplish that. I do think that giving the Cavs now, not only, they're not as reliant on Dean Wade. And I think that is one thing that this move accomplished, because Dean is an awesome role player. He fits in really well, but he was very indispensable. And you saw it when he's been out injured, because the Cavs don't have any other options at that spot. Now they do. And I do think that they'll be able to play both of those guys together. I think that they're going to have a lot of space shooting wise, because now there's going to be nobody on the floor that teams feel they can ignore. Like, when the postseason arrives, Isaac Okoro, if he's healthy, he's going to be out there, and teams are not going to respect him as a shooter, but they will respect DeAndre Hunter. They will respect Dean Wade. Obviously, the guys in the backcourt, I don't need to say that. And Evan Mobley is going to be an offensive force. So this is something I think that ultimately their best lineup could be playing Evan Mobley at the 5, or Jared Allen, depending on how well he's playing, Dean Wade, DeAndre Hunter, and the 2 guards. I think that is a lineup that can absolutely destroy teams. And I think most importantly, when you look at Boston's starting lineup and the way Boston is going to close games out with Kristaps Porzingis, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Derek White, Drew Holiday, that lineup that I just mentioned for the Cavs, that's their best way to match up with it. And that was not possible necessarily with Karis LeVert or George Niang in there. That is something that the Cavs did by making this move. The Cavs got better on Thursday. They did. I have no doubt about that.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Imagine going to the big game this Sunday. That's what a lot of the people around me here on Radio Row are going to do, and the fans who are coming to New Orleans. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have time searching. Inspiration makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and take the work on ticket Game Time. Download Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Brandon Ingram is a Toronto Raptor.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast.
Toronto Raptors have traded for Brandon Ingram of the New Orleans Pelicans. It was rumored heavily over the last couple weeks. I never really thought it was going to get to the finish line because I think there were a lot of reasons why it didn't make a lot of sense for the Raptors. But we know the Raptors, they're going to do stuff that maybe Bucks convention that is a little unorthodox, and this certainly fits the bill. The cost to acquire Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, the Pacers' first-round pick next season in 2026, and a second-round pick in 2031. They hang on to that valuable Blazers pick they have in the second round this year. We're going to get into why this could work, how this will fail, if it's going to, and all of that. But we should just kind of get to the tail of the tape of the trade right now. And I think kind of sort out the rationale. And this is the thing that's kind of got me going back and forth on this trade. I slept on it last night. I was not super thrilled last night when I went to bed. Woke up a little more accepting of it, but I still think there are reasons to be kind of concerned or curious or uneasy about what's to come here in the next steps for the Raptors after this trade. But, a couple important things to note with this one. Number one, this closes the loop on the Pascal Siakam trade. Essentially, you're looking at Pascal Siakam for Brandon Ingram, Jacoby Walter, who the Raptors took with the 19th overall pick they got in the Siakam trade, and Ochai Agbaji, who the Raptors acquired with the other pick they got in that trade, the 29th pick that ended up going to the Jazz, where they picked Isaiah Collier last year. So you look at it in the whole, like, that's, I think, a pretty all right way to look at it as far as asset management goes. You turn Pascal Siakam, a couple years older than Brandon Ingram, I'd say a better player than Brandon Ingram, and certainly more durable than Brandon Ingram, but you turn him into Brandon Ingram, a guy with all-star upside, and you bring in Ochai Agbaji and Jacoby Walter as well. The pure cost to acquire here, pretty low. And that, I think, is the reason why Brandon Ingram is on the Toronto Raptors right now. I think there's all this sort of, hand-wringing or concern about, well, what does this do for the Raptors' direction, their plan? Their plan has and always will be stay flexible, be opportunistic above all. Even though they're in a rebuild, and we'll get into why I don't think this changes course for this season at all, but even though they're in a quote-unquote rebuild, they've pounded that terminology all season long. This is a franchise, this is a front office that is always poking around, looking for guys to trade for, looking for ways to upgrade. Masai Ujiri has been a very good trader over the course of his career, dating back even to Denver. Like, this is a guy who knows how to make trades, knows how to win trades, and this is a thing they've always done. If you can get a guy for a low cost of acquisition, it's worth the headaches and questions that might come with it. I think there are a lot of headaches and questions that come with this one. We'll get into those, but I get the rationale here for sure. The idea here is you bring in Brandon Ingram, who, again, former All-Star back in 2019-20. He is a very good scorer, the best scorer that they've had on this team in quite some time. He brings to the table, some pick and roll craft. He obviously can go and get his own shot when the chips are down. He helps cover for some of the stuff that I think we've learned this year that Scotty Barnes is maybe not so great at. I think there are fit concerns. We'll get into that in terms of, ways in which this doesn't work out and ways it can work. But as far as just getting pure talent on the team, I understand this is what the Raptors do. And I don't think it derails their plan at large for this season, right? Brandon Ingram's been hurt. He's been out since December the 7th with an ankle sprain. Doesn't seem like he's any close to returning. And it feels like the Raptors are probably just going to let him sit this one out, or at the very most, like, get him into a handful of games down the stretch here just to see what they've got. I mean, I'd like to see what they've got, but I also think they're pretty, obviously angling towards the draft. They've used that terminology all year. The rebuild, the draft is important to us. Development. They're playing the rookies a lot right now. Like, this is the path I think they're still going to be on, even though Ingram is here. This is not a trade that in any way resembles the Jakob Poeltl trade of a couple years ago in spirit. I know that's kind of on the surface. Well, this tanking bad team trades a first-round pick for a win-now guy. Like, what's that about? Are they going to push for the play-in? I don't think that's what's happening here. I think this is about getting Brandon Ingram in the door and using this as sort of their off-season acquisition, which they've done in the past. They've been pretty good at this. Serge Ibaka back in the day. They did this with Jakob Poeltl. They've done this before, where they trade for a guy they want, and then they keep him around. They did it with Kelly Olynyk just a year ago and used Kelly Olynyk to go trade for Brandon Ingram. This is a thing that the Raptors do that I think defies convention a little bit and kind of puzzles people. But again, this is not the Raptors making a push for the play-in this year. This is them getting a guy in the door who addresses the talent, who addresses some of the shot creation issues this team has. I mean, the defense has been great of late. The offense has been kind of butt for the Raptors over the last little while. And it's because they don't have a ton of organic shot creation, right? It's Scotty Barnes sometimes, it's Emmanuel Quickley sometimes. And beyond that, it's pretty tough to just have looks created from nothing. So much is dependent upon their system, which their system is pretty good at. They have a very good shot profile. They get to the rim a ton. Like, they get good looks out of what they do. But sometimes you just need a dude who can go get a bucket. And Brandon Ingram is that if he's healthy, which is the big thing that hangs over all of this. His health and whatever they're going to pay him are the two things that are really going to inform what this trade ends up looking like, right? I think this is the thing that drives me nuts with this trade, is because, like, on this show, I am constantly preaching the concept of, like, you don't need to just tank. That's like not the only way to go and procure talent and be good, right? That's one way, but the other way is just, take what you have, turn a couple of beans into a house over time, right? It's the slow, trading of assets and improving, putting yourself in a position to be good, have a lot of good players. The Raptors now have a lot of good players, right? Like, Brandon Ingram at full health is a very good player. Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Jakob Poeltl, Grady Dick, Jacoby Walter one day maybe, Jamal Shed one day maybe, Ochai Agbaji. Like, they have themselves 7, 8, 9, 10 guys going into next season that you feel pretty good about getting NBA minutes, and that's before they even use their pick in this year's draft, which, by the way, is going to be a pretty high pick, and we'll get into how that could help usher things along here, depending on how the draft lottery goes and who they get in the draft this year, to amplify and bolster this whole thing. But again, the sort of concept of trading to improve just because you can, I've always been a fan of that. I think just getting good players is a good thing to do. Masai Ujiri, this has always been his MO. Think of back to Denver. Those teams were just collections of pretty good players who won 50 games. Like, you can get a long way. This was the thing with the Kyle and DeMar teams too, with the post-championship team in 2019-20. If you get a lot of good players, it can overcome not having maybe super high-end talent, and you can still be a very good team. And I think that's what the goal has to be. I know this maybe isn't a deal that you look at and say, well, this team now has championship upside. Guess what? Very few teams do. The actual goal to me in the era of parity should be build a regular, perennial playoff team and hope that can then be parlayed into something better. And I think there's a world in which this does happen from the Brandon Ingram trade for the Raptors. Again, lots of good players. If things break right, if they get the health that they'll need, if Ingram gets a contract that's not too bloated, there's a world in which all the outcomes that come out of this are good, right? Like, this can end very well for the Raptors and kickstart a really fun era of basketball. There's also a lot of downsides with the health and the contractual situation and the way the books are set up in this NBA, where, like, having flexible, fungible books is a pretty important thing. You don't want to be too bogged down with bloated contracts that limit your flexibility, limit your upside, all of that. That's all in consideration here as well. Ultimately, I'm at like a 5.5 out of 10 on this one. I was probably a 4 out of 10 last night. I think there's worlds in which this works out, and I get the logic of it. I don't think this is them kind of bucking some plan. This was always the plan, I think. And this is the plan I suggested they should try to follow, which is, 1 year in the tank, sure, but this team's too far along in terms of their contracts, in terms of the guys they have on the team already, to be doing a prolonged 2, 3, 4 year tank. This isn't the Wizards. They're way ahead of that. And I thought expediting the process by getting a good player in the door was probably a good idea. I think my concern is that Brandon Ingram, I'm kind of unsure if he's the right player.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Imagine going to the big game this Sunday. That's what a lot of the people around me here on Radio Row are going to do, and the fans who are coming to New Orleans. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have time searching. Inspiration makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and take the work on tickets. Gametime. Download Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
The Chiefs are 60 minutes, 4 quarters, and 1 trophy away from another championship.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Right now, where it all begins is how do you take this season-long projection and put it all together? This is going to be the 100th game this team has played in the last 5 seasons. That's monumental. And putting all that experience and all that fatigue, the less time with your family, the more time in recovery, all together to try to get this done is epic to the point where it's almost unfathomable. So you have the veterans in Mahomes, obviously the older guys in Kels. Then you have all this youth. You're trying to pull all these groups together. It all comes down to one thing. Do you want to win this and go into the history books more than you're willing to concede any play at any time, at any moment in this ballgame? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I think that it's an obvious answer for anybody on this team. They're going to want to sacrifice everything they can for this game, for this team to win a Super Bowl. And it goes beyond just the guys that are the young guys now. It goes beyond the guys that have been here for the past 2 years or last year that were drafted last year. It's now the rookies even. The rookies want to play for a Super Bowl. They want to win a Super Bowl. Xavier Worthy wants to win a Super Bowl. He wants to be a Super Bowl champion his rookie season, like the 2 previous Chiefs draft classes before him. That is what's crazy about this. And, we don't talk about a guy in Jared Wiley who's not even going to be able to play in this game. But, you're sitting here looking at another guy that is another rookie that would have probably been having, some impact on Sunday. Unfortunately, he can't play, obviously. It will be out. But you look at this game, you look at what this is going to mean for this Chiefs team. You talk about playing 100 games in 5 years. I'll up you the fact that they have actually played an extra 6 weeks of football compared to just about any other team in the NFL because they're playing 2 weeks after every single year. Like, the Eagles are the only other team that are even close when you start looking at how many weeks they've been playing football, how many weeks they've been doing different things. And it goes further because the Chiefs don't even get into their offseason program, their offseason stuff until after the Super Bowl. And now you're getting ready to play in this game that you've been building the entire season for and building ever since last year. And now it's finally here. And you're sitting here thinking, okay, all this started, all of this comes down to, and I will never forget, if you go back and watch the last drive of the game, last Super Bowl against the 49ers, they're talking about, so the announcers are talking about, Jim Nantz is talking about how you have played since July. You've been training since July and August, and actually you've probably been training since May or April for the Super Bowl. Like, that's how long you've been doing this. It's almost a year-long process, and you're finally here. This team is going to be ready. They're going to put it all out on the field. The bigger question is can the Eagles come out and not be a little bit are the Eagles going to come out and play loose? Because if they don't, that's going to be a problem for them.
And I think it's a problem for their staff as well. For the Chiefs and how formidable they are, any staff looking at them has to be a little bit shriveled. You got to be real. And I think this one in particular has some axes to grind. Doesn't particularly care for the Chiefs fan base, even though he was here for a while. And Sirianni is a guy that I think it's easy to root against if you're not an Eagles fan. Just like everybody seems right now to root against Mahomes if you're not a Chiefs fan. Okay, fine. The question becomes, what do you do to put it together? And it's about understanding yourself first. Self-scouting is key. I'm sure they've done more of it. They seem to have emerged with their plan coming together, and we talked about that a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, folks. The plan to get to this point so that you're healthy, so that you have everything going in the right direction, that has come to fruition, and that makes all the difference in the world. But now you got to go execute. And it's about not just having confidence in your teammates or the new guys or even the rookies that are in here, but understanding that no matter what happens, you're going to have an answer. If they come out and they're jamming you at the line of scrimmage, you can't throw the ball you want to, you can go back and run. If they're going to leave the box light, you're going to have to run. If they feel like, you know what, they can get away with anything and bring another guy down, you have to make them pay for it. All of that is confidence instilling. It just takes continued effort, much like we've seen the last 2 weeks, which I think has been really a positive foreshadowing here. You said when you have to rely on the defense, they can get their part done as well. The offense has been ticking along, especially in the first quarter. I expect this game to be off to a fast start, one way or the other. Now, the outcome will be different. We're going to give you our predictions coming up in a little bit, but it's got to start fast for me.
No, it absolutely has to start fast, and the Chiefs need to start fast. And if the Eagles don't start fast, that's going to be a problem for them because I guarantee you Kansas City is going to start fast. Andy Reid is going to have a first 15 plays that he feels extremely comfortable with, and I expect Mahomes is going to come out and he's going to execute. I said this on our crossover show, and I'll say it again. Patrick Mahomes was outplayed by Jalen Hurts the last time they played in the Super Bowl. I don't think that anybody can really argue that. Jalen Hurts played a game that was almost flawless, except for the fumble. Yeah, except for the fumble. If he doesn't fumble that ball, maybe they end up winning the game. Who knows? But it's Patrick Mahomes, so I'm never going to say that they would have actually won. But because he does whatever it takes to get the win. The reality, though, is they're going up against the number one defense, number one scoring defense in the NFL. You know what Patrick Mahomes' record is against the number one defense in the NFL in his career?
I bet you're going to tell me.
8-2. He's 8-2 versus the number one scoring defense in the NFL. And let's not forget that when the Philadelphia Eagles played the Chiefs the last time, they beat them, and Fangio wasn't their coach at the time, but he came back and tried to help them, and it didn't work out. Do you know what Fangio's record against Andy Reid in the last 8 games is?
His has an 8 in the loss column. That's the only one I know because I think there's nothing else, right?
No, he's 0-8 against Andy Reid in the last 8 games. Andy Reid has figured out Fangio to an extent. Now, is this defense different than anything Fangio's ever had? Yeah. Are they going to do things differently than Fangio's probably done all season? I don't know. Fangio seems to be a coach that really sticks to what he normally does and expects the offense to make adjustments and to force the offense to try to beat him at his game. If he does that, good luck, because I am sure Andy Reid has a plan for how he's going to attack Fangio's defense.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Imagine going to the big game this Sunday. That's what a lot of the people around me here on Radio Row are going to do, and the fans who are coming to New Orleans. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have time searching. Inspiration makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and take the work on tickets. Gametime. Download Gametime, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Ryan Day's extension changes the game for Ohio State, and Ross Bjork's ability to lock up Ryan Day through the 2031 season and also pay him $87.5 million is a wise decision. You're getting a great coach for 3 more years past his current contract, and also showing the appreciation that you have for Ryan Day while he's been the head man of the football program. Ryan Day in his 6 years at Ohio State is 70-10. He has an 87.5% winning percentage. He is one of 3 active coaches to have won a national championship. He is one of 5 Ohio State football coaches to win a national championship. That's such an exclusive group that it's even tough for some people to even think about getting that. Ryan Day's there. In his first job in college football of being a head coach, he's there right now. And the way that Ryan Day has kept this ship moving and kept this ship stable and allowed Ohio State to stay in contention every single year to win a national championship, I think all of that is stuff Ross Bjork saw before Ross Bjork's first day on the job. Even when Ross Bjork was down there at Texas A&M, he heard about Ohio State. He knew about this Ryan Day guy, and he's probably tapping in saying, that job's coming open. Who's leading the football program? Who's the man trying to make sure that Ohio State's football program is at the top of the sport? Oh, Ryan Day? I like what he stands for. I like him. He's a family man. He's very loyal. There are a lot of qualities about Ryan Day that I think link him and Ross Bjork together. And then when Ross Bjork got to Ohio State and got a little bit closer to Ryan Day, and Ryan Day and Ross Bjork spent time together and probably had a couple drinks together, they realized, man, we see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. This is kind of like the perfect marriage between AD and football coach. And then all of a sudden, Ross Bjork gets here, and yeah, some things don't go Ohio State's way, but Ross Bjork sees the big picture. He sees looking forward What can we do to help Ryan Day out? Give him a massive payday. Now, the interesting thing about this massive payday is that Ross Bjork and Ryan Day's agent were talking about a contract extension at the end of the regular season, towards the end of the regular season, before the Michigan loss. And I think that just speaks to how much Ross Bjork trusts Ryan Day, and you should too. Everybody watching this or listening to this show today should trust Ryan Day. We have talked a lot since the postseason, in the offseason, about Ryan Day's ability to get hires right, and the Brian Hartline and Tyler Bowen and Billy Fessler and those hires, and the defensive coordinator hire, which I think is going to come very, very soon. We talked a lot about Ryan Day to adapt and to change and learn from his mistakes early in his head coaching career at Ohio State, and he has done that. And Ross Bjork is seeing the growth. He's seeing it right now, and I think moving forward, you have to lock up Ryan Day. He is now going to be the second highest paid coach in the sport, only behind Kirby Smart, who after the 2023 season signed a 10-year, $13.28 million per year contract. Had to get that out because I almost said it incorrectly. And Kirby Smart's one of those guys that's won multiple national championships. Ryan Day can do that. Ryan Day can win back-to-back national championships and to put himself in an even more exclusive group. Ryan Day has done a great job. And also, not only has Ryan Day done a great job, Ryan Day wants to be at Ohio State. We are a few weeks away from Jim Knowles going from Ohio State to Penn State, and that news breaking on the day that Ohio State celebrated the national championship win. And then Jim Knowles said some things during his introductory press conference that may have rubbed people the wrong way, that may have said, oh, maybe you're looking for the better job or a different job, but I don't know if there's a better job in the country than Ohio State. Do you have the financial backing of your AD? Absolutely. Of the school? Of course. Ted Carter and Ryan Day, they see eye to eye too. You're playing at one of the best venues in college football, really one of the best venues in the world. We think about Ohio Stadium and compared to other stadiums around the world. Ohio Stadium's up there as one of the best in the world. I think it's the best in the country. It's one of the best in the world. That's insane. But then you think about the fan base. Yeah, some people say it's a lunatic fringe. Some people say that Ohio State fans are crazy, a little fanatic, as you may want to say. Of course they are. That's what makes Ohio State football fans unique. And Ryan Day gets that. Ryan Day understands everything. And I mentioned the Jim Knowles thing on purpose because Ryan Day has repeatedly said how much he loves the Ohio community, how much he loves Buckeye Nation, how much he loves being the head football coach at Ohio State, and that he doesn't want to go anywhere. His family is in Columbus. His kids are in school. His family is growing. His family is stable. He doesn't want to go anywhere. And Ross Bjork wants someone at Ohio State that wants to be there. It's also very successful. Ryan Day has both of those. Ryan Day has earned every single penny, and I cannot wait until probably July or early August, maybe in June. I forget when the different publications go over their top college football coaches. And I normally go over the CBS Sports one here on the show and talk about Ryan Day, where he stands in the rankings and how he can move up in the rankings. I can't wait to see it. If anybody has Ryan Day outside of the top two, we might just make that a special segment here on the show and talk about it, because I don't know if there's another coach in the sport. Really, if he's the first, I understand that too. I don't know if there's another coach in the sport that you will take over Ryan Day. I don't. Steve Sarkisian? No. Kirby Smart? Some may say yes. I still might lean Ryan Day. Who else is out there? Dabo Swinney? Absolutely not. James Franklin? That's comical. I know we don't laugh and make jokes here on the show. Maybe I should, because James Franklin over Ryan Day? That ain't going to happen. Absolutely not. There's other coaches out there that are very successful, Marcus Freeman being one of them. I'm taking Ryan Day, man. Ryan Day is a successful coach. Ryan Day has learned a lot on the job in a place where you don't get on-the-job training. It's not supposed to be that kind of program. And Ryan Day has got that. And that job security piece for Ryan Day, he understands it and he needs it. His wife understands it. His wife wants it. Not just financial backing, being able to get $12.5 million per year, but it's being locked up through 2031. And it wouldn't shock me if Ohio State won another natty between now and the end of Ryan Day's contract extension. It wouldn't shock me at all. It wouldn't shock me if Ryan Day turned into a coach that won the natty every 4 years. So guys, once they're recruited to Ohio State, they're saying, look, during my time at Ohio State, I'm going to win at least one national championship, because that's the path that Ryan Day has Ohio State on. We can't go that far yet. We haven't seen it. There's 1-6. Will there be 1 to the next 4? It's possible. It's likely. But I don't know if it's actually going to happen. But it could, because of the path Ryan Day is on, the lessons he's learned this year, and his ability to do what is needed to keep Ohio State at the top of the sport. While keeping Ohio State at the top of the sport, Ryan Day has provided a massive level of consistency, and he's kept the program stable in his first 6 years at Columbus, Ohio. And I think that's something Buckeye fans can expect moving forward.